Great, thank you.
Hi there, how are you?
Christmas is still 2 months away. Come around.
Oh, now you've done it. Steak. Sorry. We're gonna start in about 30 seconds. Call to order, regular board meeting, Tuesday, October 13th at 7 p.m. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Deputy Clerk Niza, please call for order.
Supervisor Acovetti,
Here.
Treasurer LaFata,
Here.
Trustee Anderson,
Here.
Trustee DeMay,
Here.
Trustee Joseph, Trustee Bosford,
Here. I would ask for an excuse for the third period.
so moved.
Support is to refrain from tolerating their recommendations. Item number 4 is presentations. There are no presentations. Item number 5, department reports. Trustee DeMay.
And one from the Leisure Services Parks and Recs Department. Chesterfield Township Senior Center is closed and will remain closed for walk-in activities until January 2021. The program is being offered by the Leisure Services Department on top of the daily. They have limited capacity and pre-registration is required. Engage us through the Facebook pages and through our website. Enroll your child ages 2 through 8 dance plans posted at a Drop Everything Dance Studio in partnership with Chesterfield Leisure Services. Visit the website to find out class offering days, times, fees, and when to register. And lastly, karate and taekwondo are coming your way. Youth Academy and Genbukai Karate, if I pronounce that correctly, facility are open and ready to kick it in gear. Register for these sessions, officered through Chesterfield Leisure Services, and beginning in November. Sign up online at parks.chesterfieldtownship.org. Face masks are required to enter the indoor facilities. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Any further board comments? Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. As board liaison to the police department, I accompanied Director Kirsten and his administrative staff to a meeting this past Thursday at the Myers department store. They met with both store and regional management as well as store and regional security. The ongoing discussion has been the issue of panhandling and the homelessness on the premises there in our other retail centers. Specific information I'm going to defer to the chief when he does his department reports here. I may have a couple questions. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just wanted to bring the board up to date. I'm not too sure what we're going to do with regular agenda item A, if that's something that we will kick until Clerk Barry is with us. But I did want to make mention of the fact that our cannabis committee did meet on the 28th, and we went over and discussed the legal opinion, the legal sort of feedback that we received, specifically as it relates to the township board's decision to just completely opt out and what ramifications that could have. The committee wanted to make a presentation to the board to go over some of those findings, and we had contemplated, and as you can see, it's on the agenda tonight. I suspect that it might be wise to kick that for 2 weeks until the other board chair is here, and we can deliver together what the findings of that board are. The other committee report that I have for you is comes from planning. We received another modified version of the master plan. We've been talking about the master plan for some time. We got a more concrete timeline, and the master plan will come to the planning commission for the final draft before it is then sent out to the communities surrounding our township for review. There's a 63-day process that allows neighboring communities to comment or add on or make suggestions to our master plan. There's some very interesting things in the master plan that I think you'll all be very excited about. A number of things involving the way our township is growing and where that growth could and should be best served. So the north end of the township, I guess in summary, I would say it's a complete opposite of what we did, say, on 23 Mile Road. As we look to go to the next main thoroughfare of east and west, which would be 26 Mile Road, the mixed-use residential, the inclusion of bike paths and non-motorized paths, businesses that are within walking distance of the residential areas that they serve, some very innovative and exciting ideas. One of the things that the committee focused on was to be inclusive of how we pay for these things, to make suggestions to the board with regard to how we pay for some of the ideas contained in the master plan. That would be a mixed sort of public-private partnership, and some really exciting things that I think you'll all enjoy. That will be coming to the board soon, at least the draft. It will make its way to the next planning commission meeting for the final draft, and then our next board meeting, I believe, could be at the end of this month. It may be the first meeting in November. Ultimately, the next board will receive and accept the master plan because we will be outside of the 63 days. The last thing was just a comment. I'm looking forward to the chief's presentation. Wanted to thank Trustee Anderson and Trustee DeMing. I know this isn't your committee in terms of liaison to the police department, but issues involving the police department are certainly something that you care very deeply about. This issue that we've been dealing with the increased homeless population and panhandling and so forth, something that you guys have been working on for months. I do appreciate that very much, and thanks to the chief for taking these meetings and meeting with my reporter to deal with some specific issues. So appreciate you both. Thank you.
Director Kirsten, I believe, is going to have a report.
Yes, so in light of what Trustee Joseph just echoed and said, public safety's been experienced over the past few months, particularly with COVID. Issues of panhandling in various retail parking lots, loitering, and sometimes costing some of the patrons of those locations. Through the course of the last 2.5, 3 months, we've been actively meeting with and partnering with Number One Smart and addressing some of those concerns that they also had. Recently, was brought to the podium at last board meeting. We had reached out to a lot of these corporate entities that are in the township and asked to partner with them, see what we could do to sort of mitigate some of the problems of what I had mentioned, particularly panhandling, vagrancy, costing some of the customers coming and going. I will say that all the corporate entities are more than willing and have reached out to us, and we have ongoing discussions with them. We have a problem with, a social problem with homelessness that is sort of migrating its way north, particularly in our community. It's problematic. We are trying to manage it, mitigate it the best we can, provide services to those in need, along with these entities that are also trying to, on their part, struggle through it. One particular entity we met with, I did invite Trustee Anderson, because he is the liaison, to sit with us, see if he had some private solutions that he could help out with, sort of make him aware of what we're dealing with on the public safety side. And the meeting that we had was definitely a benefit to all. Open lines of communication again through all the vendors, and we're really trying to work on a solution to how we address this problem that's not going to go away.
Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chief. I know during that meeting it came up, seems to be some of the issues, if a patron is, okay, I'm a parent of two adult children, females, and a wife, so I'm concerned about what happens in our retail centers. I know during the new news this past week, there was a entertainer in Oakland County, apparently allegedly shot several times. First thing he did is went online, they showed it at the news, and did a Facebook presentation talking about being shot and everything else. My question would be, the way social media, it seems to be the new reality here, and I wonder if anyone else is familiar with that. Did he call the police first? Was this after he made a police report, or was it just I'm posting this because this is the new headset, you put everything on there? And the question I have for you, and I should probably put it on, if you put on a department Facebook page, is if a patron feels bothered either in the store or in the parking lot by these homeless or these individuals, instead of going right to Facebook, should there be something else that they might want to do first before they start creating this identity? If it's a problem, it's a problem. But would you have some suggestions for these individuals and patrons, what they should do in these cases? If they're in the store and someone's coming at them, make them feel uncomfortable, or in the parking lot, whether it's panhandling or whatever.
Yeah, so that's one of the connections that we're trying to improve on. Inside the store, obviously it's the store responsibility, and their loss prevention is very mindful of managing that on-premise negative contact. What we're seeing, the disconnect on our side, and as you pointed out, once they're in the parking lot, they dial 911 and we respond to the cell phone call. A store entity doesn't really know that we were called, or that victim in the parking lot was accosted or solicited, or there was some sort of illegal act that took place. The store had no knowledge of it. We didn't go back in and ask them unless we needed video. But if it was away from the video, and all our officers are pretty aware of where the video ends in certain locations, it was usually away in the parking lot. So we opened up that line of communication with all the retailers. We now will inform them, and just a small piece, the 2 board meetings, you approved us on online reporting, which allows an open window and access to these retail loss prevention agents that now get to look in, and we will send them notices of such an event that occurs on their property, whether it be in the store or outside. As far as the social media posts, we're monitoring it. We have officers, detectives that monitor it. And yes, there is an element where you hit social media before you call the police. If you had a negative contact in one of the parking lots and you didn't report it, you go home and you put it on social media, we have to be notified or reminded, or somebody sends it to us to make us aware, and we try and reach out to that individual and follow up on it and see if there is some sort of criminal act that we can investigate and then eventually prosecute. Again, it's all about communication. Sometimes you're in the loop, sometimes you're out of the loop. It's our job and our task to make sure that everybody's in the loop, everybody's included, whether it be the retail, whether it be the victim, the alleged victim, and we need to respond, have the ability to respond to it. And that's what we're trying to close that circle.
Trustee Joseph.
I'm sorry, Trustee Anderson. Just to follow up to Trustee Anderson. About this time last year, it's right as the sort of days get shorter, the sun is going down. People stop at the grocery store on their way home from work. It's about this time last year, there was a report on Facebook of what was alleged to be a very serious crime. In fact, the argument was made for potentially a human trafficking case. It spread like wildfire on social media. It's not the first, there have been many, but this one last year in particular caused me to reach out to Captain Franks and McNair. They were aware of about 15 different versions of the story. It gets very, very difficult to police via social media. Most recently, we've seen some things on social media, and some statements made that the police are being overrun. Do you feel in any way that the department is not able to handle the challenges that we're seeing with the increased panhandling and so forth?
No, absolutely not. We're able to manage it, and we do. And in that particular event, that was a falsehood that was put out across statewide to one specific retail. They just changed the name and location. We did chase it down. We dedicated resources to it. It took about a week to track it down. Completely false and fake. The resource problem, we have enough on the criminal side. I'm going to go off key. We got a social problem. We have a homeless population that over the last 6 months, in my estimation, without hard numbers, has tripled. And we have a bus system that was offering free rides that allowed this population to ride freely, and they had nothing better to do but to ride the line out, which ended here at 23 in Gratiot. That created a problem. Now, they're not criminals, but they're homeless and they have needs that need to be met. On the law enforcement side, as police officers, we're not social workers. Our resources on the law enforcement side are very limited. It's a social problem. So we try to find them homes, shelters, places to go. When you have large care facilities that are shut down and won't take anybody in, they're basically left to fend for whatever they can get, and unfortunately, it's along our retail corridor.
Well, we also have, I'm sorry, just one more. We also have in that population a lot of mental health issues, and I know Trustee Rosberg can speak to that with her work with community mental health. It becomes difficult to police because you're dealing with a population that is without means. They're a large contingent of homeless individuals, a lot of mental health issues. And it doesn't negate the fact that if our residents aren't feeling safe, I appreciate the work that is being done to work with the store, to work with the regional manager. The individual that's been over at Meyer, I've known him for years, is a great community partner, somebody who consistently donates to our police's open house and other community events. So I hope we have a relationship there where we're not attacking our friends and we don't have individuals, taking issue with corporate, because they do monitor the social media, and anytime any of those retailers are tagged, they suffer a hit as well. Sometimes it can be a little unfair to make these claims. They tick up a bit at campaign time. It's been the case since I've been on the board. We see these stories and then individuals who will fix the problem, of course, but by and large, what I would like to see is the continuation of our relationship with these great retailers, and maybe Trustee Gosberg can speak about some of the remedies potentially for mental health. And one additional suggestion to you, Trustee DeMing, on the Parks and Rec Commission, we have an individual who has donated services. Doreen Hankins, who runs Detroit Arms, is an individual that I think maybe we should reach out to. She runs wildly popular self-defense courses, particularly for women. And in addition to the firearms training, she just offers basic safety lessons, something that perhaps our Parks and Rec could incorporate in their winter programming. Doreen, I've spoken to her many times, is willing to offer a very discounted rate to our Parks and Rec team. Would be something maybe worthwhile to look into. But thanks again, Chief and Liaison Anderson.
David, forward me that name and info, and
I'll definitely
all right, thanks.
Trustee.
Thank you. I think just to wind up the discussion, have you met with the representative from community mental health yet? Because I know they were going to
Yes.
reach out.
We have not met with them. We have a scheduled meeting, and we have their resources available to us, which we were taking advantage of, absolutely.
Right, all right, very good. So I think that people in the community need to know, you're communicating that as well, but we are aware of it and are working on it and trying
Yes.
to get all the resources together that we can, because there's varying needs and there's probably no two situations that are the same. But thank you for your work.
Trustee Mink.
Chief, do we have any ordinance regarding panhandling, like enforcement-wise?
We do not solicit. There is a solicitation ordinance where you can't go onto somebody's private property and solicit. We do have that ordinance. But as far as speaking to the individuals who sit on the county right-of-ways or stand in the roadway soliciting, whether it be a homeless person holding a sign and petting a dog and sitting there waiting for people to donate money to him, or Knights of Columbus standing at 23 in Gratiot, 21 in Gratiot, Sugar Bush and Callens, we do not have the ability to cite them for soliciting. They do have a right to be in the roadway. I conferred with our township council today. There's been no change to that law. The only option we have is if they impede traffic, we can write them for a civil infraction. And when you bring a chair out to the middle of the intersection, you're impeding traffic, so the chair was quickly removed.
Because I believe where I'm working, they have an ordinance because they've been rating people like in the major highways for doing it. Do we need to try and adopt an ordinance, talk with council to see if we can adopt anything? Because I know what happens in the city where I work and what's going on, because we had the same problem. And there's also, just besides the homeless people, there's a lot of scamming going on. And they're really not homeless people, they're just people out there scamming to get money, and they're better off than a lot of people. So, I just from my contact where I'm at. So.
Mr. Siebert, would you mind commenting on the ordinance piece of the discussion, please?
Jack, one comment real quick. Trustee Joseph and Supervisor, we have a great relationship with our retailers, and it was just enhanced over this past month with open line of communication, so we're on page with that.
Yeah, to address the issue of the solicitation or begging in the public right-of-way, that issue was decided by the Sixth Circuit, which is the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, which binds Michigan, Kentucky, Ohio, and Tennessee. And that Court of Appeals case is a 2013 decision, and it specifically arose out of the state of Michigan. Michigan used to have a statute that had been in effect since the 20s, and that statute had prohibited begging in public places. And there were homeless individuals that had been ticketed for, in fact, begging on the lawns of state highways, on city highways, township, county roads, and they challenged the constitutionality of that ordinance, and it went to the United States Court of Appeals. And the issue before the court was whether or not somebody who begs, who asks for money for themselves, as opposed to a charitable organization that asks for money for it to be distributed to other presumably worthwhile causes, should be treated the same. And the Court of Appeals answered that question in the affirmative and said that somebody that wants to beg for money for themselves is to be treated no differently than a charitable organization that raises money for other individuals. So the answer to the question is any regulation that would prohibit any individual from standing along the side of the road, so long as they're not impeding traffic, would be unconstitutional. And that law is clear as crystal clear. And as a matter of fact, there's an Attorney General opinion from Attorney General Schuette in 2016, who ended up losing that case in 13, who ruled that even charitable organizations should not be in the right-of-way soliciting money, despite the fact that it happens every year. He concluded that it violates the motor vehicle code. So the long and the short of it is that you cannot distinguish between a charitable organization on the side of the road and someone who's begging for themselves. That was well said.
Thank you. Any further department reports? We're still, all right, number 5. Correct. Anything additional?
I'm good.
Any further departments wish to update the board on happenings in the township? Moving on to item number 6, which is the consent agenda.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any of these items is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 22nd, 2020. Item B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. Item C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. And item D, approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase meters and meter components from Ferguson Waterworks at a total cost of $6,975.67 from GL number 591-542-740.000.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I will defer to trustee Joseph. Do you want to remove that item?
I think we could probably, I can give you the overview and we can decide how much we want to do, so.
We could also deal with it, like, when the agenda item comes
Yes.
up, if the table is an option, that would probably be the proper time to do that.
Support.
Motion by trustee Devine, support by trustee Glasper to approve the consent agenda. Discussion from the board. Comments from the public on the consent agenda only. Motion by trustee Devine, support by trustee Glasper to approve item 6 as submitted. Deputy Clerk Nice, please call the roll.
Trustee Devine.
Aye.
Trustee Bosper.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFawn.
Aye.
Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. Item number 7 is the regular agenda, 7A.
Discussion of the Cannabis Committee regarding Township Council's legal opinion, letter, and possible amendment to the commercial cannabis ordinance.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Joseph.
Support.
Support by trustee Anderson. Discussion. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I would like to have the inclusion of Clerk Berry. She is the co-chair of the Cannabis Committee for more thorough deliberation and discussion on this, and I'm happy to answer any questions that any board members may have. But the outcome, the summary outcome of the September 28th meeting is simply this. The committee heard from our township attorney, and the township attorney has advised us, in essence, that what happens if we remain in an opt-out scenario, which is what this board took action on some time ago, that we're most certain to have a challenge to our policy. And that challenge could, and we heard testimony from participants in the audience who assured us that it is actually in the works now, that there are ballot language being discussed. It will come, I believe, and I think the overall opinion of the committee is that we will most certainly face a ballot initiative, which our attorney is the principal discussion that we had was, what does that mean to the community? And in essence, what it means is, if a ballot initiative moves forward, and we can get into more discussions in the full presentation about what that looks like, but it's a fairly easily satisfied threshold to bring the ballot initiative forward. It has to do with the percentage of individuals who voted in the last gubernatorial. By all accounts, it is a very easy threshold to meet. And in essence, what would happen is that a group of individuals or organization would bring forth a ballot initiative that simply says, we would like to have Chesterfield Township unlimited dispensaries, or unlimited grow operations, or really whatever the request is of the ballot initiative. If the ballot initiative goes to the voters and is approved, the township in essence then is reduced to a simple zoning and planning as we would any other request. So it's not an approval of say, the site plan, but we would lose tremendous ability to work cooperatively with individuals and review options that we thought might work better for our community. So the concern is really, do we have an interest in examining something other than our current policy, something other than our current opt-out? The very wise advice, and it wasn't really a blueprint at all, but the discussion that we had and the feedback from Attorney Siebert was really the board needs to make a decision about whether they would like to do something different than what we currently have in place. Because if it is the intention of the board to do nothing and simply say we have an opt-out, and I'm content with that, and I'm not interested in changing that unless the voters decide, that would be the place to start. That would be the discussion to have among the board, because without a simple majority on this board, without 4 individuals coming forward to say, I think we should revisit our opt-out position, there's really nothing to discuss. The number of dispensaries, where, grows, things like that, it's irrelevant. It really won't matter if the intent of the board is to remain in the opt-out status. So, in talking with Clerk Berry, I know we were contemplating bringing forth a motion today. Obviously, I know that she would like to weigh in on this, and I don't know the full details surrounding her absence tonight, but I assume she would like to be here if she could. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have, or feedback from the audience as well. But Mr. Supervisor, I think I would like to continue this discussion until Clerk Berry has returned, and I suspect that will be just a two-week taking. So but maybe before making that motion, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I know I have Treasurer LaFatta wanted to speak to it, and it is just discussion, so even a table of this item would look a little funny there. Maybe it's a continuation for next
Very good.
board meeting, or a table, so it just
Sure.
automatically pops back up.
Sure.
And I do think that is, this is going to require a whole lot more discussion. I agree with that direction. Treasurer LaFatta.
It's more of a question based on some of the aspects that Trustee Joseph just mentioned. Evidently, Clinton Township, from what I understand, what we're hearing, they've already been served, and there's going to be ballot initiatives for marijuana growth and sales and whatever else there is involved in their ballot petition. My question is to Trustee Joseph, where is the risk for continuing to opt out, or a ballot initiative, or for middle ground? Because I'm assuming that a ballot initiative, somebody could say, I want 6 grow houses and 4 retail establishments. And if that passes, then that would be what would happen in the township based on appropriate zoning. If we opt to create our own negotiations, there's more control where we might be able to limit the number of grow operations and retail establishments. So I'm just trying to understand where the board has the biggest or the best way to control this in the township. Is it by opting out? Is it by letting a ballot initiative happen? Or is it by trying to work out some kind of common ground?
Yeah, so I think if Mr. Seibert wants to weigh in on this, it probably wouldn't hurt, but in general, what we were talking about at the committee, of which Mr. Seibert was a part, is exactly that. You're talking about risk, and we tried to look at both sides. So the risks associated with tend to lean into a I don't like marijuana or I do like marijuana sort of argument, which the Cannabis Committee really looked at the opposite way, and that was to simply say, if it's a legal product and it's a business like any other business, we have a position here on the opt-out which does bring, it invites a certain level of risk in terms of being able to manage the number of licenses, the types of licenses. One of the interesting discussions that came as an offshoot of that is we could, as a board, decide to entertain something other than the opt-out. So, for example, if we said, well, we would like to have, well, maybe not like, but we would permit X number of grows or X number. We're not immune at that point from a ballot initiative just because we amend our opt-out. we could have a group or individuals who say, we're not satisfied with that, and therefore we're going to go forward with a ballot initiative. So the risks associated with both were heavily discussed. I think the committee felt like the best position to be in at first would be to decide, one, if the board wants to do anything other than what we're doing, and then what does that look like? Because there is a real downside to the ballot initiative process as it relates to control over where, what, how, who, and all of those types of things. So I hope I didn't botch it, but I think that was the kind of the summation of our discussion.
No, I think you summarized it accurately.
Thank you. I would expect, without any further comments from the board, I think there's maybe a motion to postpone and ensure this gets on the next board meeting again. I would expect when we do move forward with this, I'd like to see this have its own special board, special meeting. I think it is going to take some time, and I would like to see the presentation again coming out. We know the issue. We've been in this maze here for 2 years, along with all the other communities. The ballot proposal option is out there, and it's something that we're going to have to deal with. So I would expect a full-blown special board meeting. And if there is a motion to postpone this item, we'll pass back up on the next meeting. I would entertain that now.
Supervisor, there would be no, continuation of the discussion, the regular agenda item would not negate a special board meeting if we decided to also schedule a separate board meeting. So I would like to make the motion to continue the discussion associated with regular agenda item 7A and for 2 weeks.
Amended motion by Trustee Joseph to basically ensure this item is on the next board agenda in 2 weeks. Is there additional support? And continued support by Trustee Anderson. Discussion, and then we'll.
Just one parliamentary. This is a regular agenda item, and I know it's a discussion that was centered around the board, but I do see some members of the audience who have attended every cannabis committee meeting, and it would be fair, I think, to offer them an opportunity to speak on these discussions.
Absolutely. Any public comment on the motion to continue this discussion at the next board meeting? Public comment on every agenda. Almost. We got one.
Thanks. Well, good evening, Chris Ayala, 49432 Compass Point, Chesterfield. Probably a good idea to wait for Cindy to get back. You're right up. You gave words of wisdom. Either yes or no at the next meeting. It's 2 years is right. I feel like I should have a bed and a couch in here by now after 2 years. So 2 years has been long enough. We're all educated. We're all smart people. We know what points of where we fall on this spectrum at this point. And so in 2 weeks, let's just get down to it and have a game and find out what you guys want to do. Does that sound fair?
We'll see you in 2 weeks. Any further comments from the public? Any further follow-ups from the board? Motion by Trustee Anderson, support by Trustee Joseph to continue the discussion on item 7A at our next regularly scheduled board meeting. Deputy Clerk Massey, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Deming.
Aye.
Trustee Vosper.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFatta.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7B.
A recommendation by Supervisor Akavetti to reappoint Holly Kirsten to the Parks and Recreation Commission with the term ending December 2023.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Deming.
Motion by Trustee Deming, support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion.
She's a great asset. I've worked with her the last almost 4 years now, Parks and Rec, and Holly's done a great job. She's here because she's working at the library.
Any further comments from the board? Comments from the public to approve the appointment of Holly Kirsten to the Parks and Rec Commission until December 2023. Motion by Trustee Deming, support by Trustee Joseph. Deputy Clerk Massey, please call the roll.
Trustee Deming.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosper.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFava,
Aye.
Trustee Anderson,
Aye.
Supervisor Acopetti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7C.
Establish trick-or-treat hours in the township on Saturday, October 31st, 2020, from 6 o'clock p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Domingue,
Support.
support by trustee Joseph. Discussion. There will be trick or treating. Comments from the public? Motion by trustee Domingue, support by trustee Joseph to approve item 7C as submitted. Deputy Clerk Nysa, please call the roll.
Trustee Domingue,
Aye.
Trustee Joseph,
Aye.
Trustee Bosford,
Aye.
Trustee Anderson,
Aye.
Treasurer LaFava,
Aye.
Supervisor Acopetti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7D.
Request by the clerk's office to review and discuss chapters 1 through 34 of the township recodification.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Anderson, support by trustee Bosford.
Good evening, board members. Usually I don't do this, but I have prepared something I would like to read to you tonight. Trustee Bosford called me prior to the meeting and asked me a question, and I thought to myself, I read over the introduction and the package that we prepared for you, and I don't know that we included everything in it. So this project has taken a lot of time. There's been a lot of people involved in it, and I just... Is that better?
Yes.
I'm sorry, thank you. I just want to make sure that I cover more of the particulars, so if you'll just bear with me, I just want to read something and then we can go to questions. Is that okay? Okay. This project was actually started in 2016. At that time, in 2016, we entered into a contract with General Code to update our code of ordinances. The process we followed began with us sending to them our code as it stood in 2016. They reviewed this for consistency throughout different parts of the ordinance, updating references to their most current publication and cleanup. After their review, they submitted to us a binder with the concerns they had with our current code. That binder is where I got the questions from that I presented to you in the packet. They gave us the questions that were posed, and they generally came with options for our response. We could choose to leave our code as it stood, we could choose to revise it upon a suggestion that they made to us, or we could suggest something of our own to revise it to. Our job was to take those questions and return solid answers that had been investigated with department heads that were most familiar with the subject. On that note, as I'm thinking of it, I do want to thank all the department heads. They were great. Everybody answered me, sat down with a lot of them would just email me back their answers, but I appreciate them all. Since that time, the board has addressed many of the substantive changes that were reviewed in the questions submitted by General Code by adopting amending ordinances to reflect those. This fact will affect one of the responses that were initially made in that binder that I gave you, which was, do we want a totally new code or do we want to adopt simply code revisions? Back in 2017 when I started on this, we had not made all of those changes yet, the amendments. We were going to just request a totally new ordinance, and now we're going to request one amendment to the code. As we begin this discussion, I'd like to point out just a couple of things. First, there are no policy decisions this board has to make. We're strictly dealing with updating, cleanup, and consistency of the code of ordinances. There are still two chapters, both Chapter 58, which is land division and regulations, and Chapter 64, which is utilities, that will require additional substantive changes, and those will be brought before the board separately. Next, should you have any question at all, you may call any of the department heads, and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you. You can also call Attorney Anderson, who has been amazing on this project. Some days I'm sure I call her 7 or 8 times a day, and she's always been great to help. The last thing I want to do in this little review is kind of go over the scheduling. There's a lot of different steps. As I said, we've been working on this for well over 2 years. We finally bring it to you guys. So this is how it should go. At the first meeting tonight, we'll be reviewing the first act of the questions from General Code and our code through Chapter 34, Environment. At the end of tonight's discussion, a motion would be in order to approve the changes that are recommended in those chapters that are presented tonight. At the next meeting, that we bring the second part back, hopefully at the October 27th meeting, we'll be reviewing the code starting at chapter 34, which is regarding fire, and going through chapter 72, which is regarding waterways. We were originally, when this started, going to also be reviewing chapter 76, which is the zoning ordinance, but that has already had a major change, so we didn't have to review that. We left this out of this review. At this time, I will prepare the completed set of questions. What you folks have approved at this meeting and the next meeting, what you're satisfied with, if there's any big changes that I brought to you that you don't like, we can address those tonight. Then I'm going to be taking all of those answers, answer the questions in the binder, submit the ordinance amendments that we've made, any other documents that we may need. I'll be sending those to General Code. They will be putting together a final draft. That final draft is then going to come back to you folks, and you're going to have to look at that. We don't know how long that draft is going to take to come back. I'm hoping not too long. Once you folks look at that draft, you're satisfied that we've addressed all the changes that you talked about, that were reviewed in here, that the department heads suggested, that the attorney approved, we're going to be sending that back to General Code. At that time, they're going to prepare a list of the changes that we've agreed upon. We are going to give that list to our attorney, and they're going to compose a public notice that will cover all the changes that you folks have made. As these are changes to the regulatory portion of the Code of Ordinances and not the zoning ordinance, they will be required to follow. They will need to follow required procedure. They'll be presented at one meeting for their introduction and first reading, and a public notice will be posted in the Voice newspaper. They will be presented at a second meeting for a second reading and adoption. Again, there will be a notice in the Voice newspaper. This ordinance will be considered effective after 30 days of publication. And I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to that day. So on that note, if there's any questions, I will try to answer them. And if I can't do that, I will find the answer out for you.
Questions from the board from Green? Trustee, we'll start with Anderson.
The similar process is occurring with planning in terms of the review of all of our ordinances, and the Giffords-Webster's team is kind of leading that sort of ordinance audit, if you will. And the presentation that was made to the Planning Commission members were that there's a cleanup, if you will. There's some language and there's some just housekeeping, administrative changes that are being made before there's anything that requires a vote or a sort of a legislative action, if you will, then come to the board. It sounds like you're doing the same process
Exactly.
here. It is simply just a more organized, cleaner version of the code, and any amendments that are made don't substantially change the spirit or the enforcement of the code.
That's correct.
Okay. Just really can't stress strongly enough how difficult that process is, and I'm glad that Attorney Anderson is with you, because
Me too.
in our planning discussions, we get into a few areas where we go, wait a minute, are we sure that's a cleaning issue, or does that substantially change? And thankfully, we haven't had any big ones, but they can run into real problems from a legal perspective. So I assume these are things that you're watchful for, Ms. Anderson.
She's looked at everything.
And that's true, and even though these are house cleaning issues, they will still be amendments to the code, and they'll be done so in an ordinance adopted by this board, just like every other regular ordinance. So once you guys have approved these changes, it'll go back to the general code, they will prepare a list of all the changes. We will put that into ordinance format for review and approval by this board. So there'll be no changes made to the code, housekeeping or otherwise, until you approve it.
Just one suggestion. The reason I raised the parallel procedures is one of the suggestions that we had at the Planning Commission was when it's presented to the board in a binder like this, it's a little bit easier to see how a mistake or an area is not particularly caught. It's tough to review hundreds and hundreds of pages. You're taking months and months on this, and so for the board, one of the requests was to perhaps highlight an area that was something more than, say, a grammar change or a date change or a duplication. Anything that you believe is even close to a change, sort of highlighting that so it doesn't become, I guess if I asked you for a phone number and you gave me a phone book and you said, yep, it's in there, it still would require me to go through and find it. If you could give us a little, I don't know the legal term for it, but a little breadcrumb path, I guess, or some highlighted or asterisk against the things that are a little more substantial than others.
There are no substantive changes. All those substantive changes have already been done through other ordinance amendments.
Great,
So there are absolutely no substantive changes in this process.
thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, I just wonder if, like, I actually looked at about 3/4 of an inch of one of the two books that he presented to us. And Ms. Queen, you and Councilor Anderson, the work you've done, bird dogging with department heads. I even saw one where the improper word, you corrected it to department, whatever the existing word is. I commend you for both being able to, your perseverance with this project. It has to be exciting reading too on top of that, but thank you both.
Yep.
Any further comments from the board? Treasurer Lafado.
I'd like to thank Cindy Grenier for her diligence. This has been a task for her. She gave me a book, and I think I went through it little by little over a period of
I appreciate that.
4 months. And all I could do was put in common sense questions that were answered by either Cindy or our legal counsel. I know there's been a lot of tedious time put in this thing, and I don't take it lightly. There was a lot of work in there. And it wasn't fun work. To me, it was, I'll honestly say it, to me it was a boring task, and I don't think it was any different for you.
Wasn't that
So,
bad, but
like I
thank
said,
you.
I think everybody should be aware of the job and the tasks you took on to complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Any comments from the public on item 7D? I'll keep an eye out for the series, Making Code Recodification Executive Fund. Thank you as well for reading. Motion by Trustee Anderson, support by Trustee Osberg to approve item 7D is submitted. Deputy Clerk, nice, please call the roll.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Bosford. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafado.
Aye.
And Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7E.
Approve a recommendation by Planning and Public Works to purchase 13 10.2-inch Wi-Fi only iPads and one 12.9-inch iPad Pro from Apple at a total cost of $4,905 from GL number 101-373-740 and 5 10.2-inch unlocked 4G capable iPads from Verizon at a total cost of $1,799.95 from GL 591-441-740.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Domingue.
Support.
Support by Trustee Bosberg. We have Assistant Director Johnson and Director Dane.
Yes, good evening. So these tablets are going to go obviously a long way for both departments. While both of them were under $5,000, each department we felt it was most fair to come forward with as one project. So they're all, since they're all iPads, and it went over $5,000. Just wanted to come to the board for that. So from the Public Works perspective, we're looking to add 5 additional tablets to our arsenal. Right now, with the meter reading, we're going to be changing to, in the next year or so, we're going to be changing to a online platform. Same Neptune company, but it's an online platform because they're no longer supporting their software package that you install on a computer. So with that, we need to have these new tablets that you can reuse via Bluetooth for the technology to make it happen. So that's where we're using that. Unlocked because we currently have Verizon, and the reason they're unlocked is so in case we ever decide to switch providers from AT&T or whoever, they're still usable. If we stuck with Verizon and we changed to AT&T, then they'd be no longer working, so unlocked for that reason. And then for planning, I believe we're using them for the planning commission, the ZBA, and one for yourself, correct, for your department. And those are Wi-Fi only, and I believe all of these, we're looking to get the refunds through the COVID grant. We're trying to get the money back from that, so hopefully that will cover the cost of these tablets.
Questions from the board for Assistant Director Jennifer, Trustee Glasper.
Thank you. I support this. It's helpful to have proper devices to be able to use. Do we have a policy that will be followed for how these can be used, where and when, and personal use, if personal use is allowed, that type of thing?
Yeah, what happens is Cody, who from High Tech, we log in as an administrator. He logs in, so anytime we update or upload a particular app, it uploads to every single tablet. So if someone does something they shouldn't be doing, everyone else is going to know about it. So it's very easy to make sure you need to stay on task with what you're doing because everyone else is going to find out about it real quickly. So, but everyone is fully aware that it's meant for work only. It stays in the, it goes in the vans, it goes in the trucks. It's used for our asset management tools or for meter reading, and then proceed to put it away at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Do we have the ability, I know we're a little light on IT here, but do we have the ability to wipe the device remotely? So in the event that it's inadvertently lost, stolen, I don't know what data is on there, if it's only public data or if there's some information that could be sensitive, but the ability to wipe the device remotely, is it included in the software loaded into the device?
I'm not sure, I'm trying to find that out, but I know that every device or app that we use is password protected, so in order to get to whatever you need to, not only is the tablet password protected, but every app is as well, so you need multiple passwords to get to what you need to get to. Nothing is installed on the tablet that's just open up and you can use it.
So you could have a situation where a device is left unlocked and is open. I say that from experience, I've had staff.
That's true.
It's rare, but again, if there's any data that is on that device that is sensitive, it's not a difficult fix. There are programs out there that allow it to be wiped. I highly recommend you investigate that. Being able to wipe that device remotely is invaluable, especially if there's sensitive data. Just a suggestion.
Absolutely, thank you.
Treasurer Lefada.
Our IT administrator has the access, if an employee is termed, they can immediately deny access to any of our devices, computer, cell phones. If an item's lost, he can wipe out all the memory content off-site, but he has 24/7 access to every computer, every laptop that's in the township.
Thank you.
Any further comments on the board on item 7E? And I'll bring it up to the public. Motion by Trustee Dominguez, support by Trustee Vosper to approve item 7E as submitted. Deputy Clerk Nysel, please call the roll.
Trustee Dominguez?
Aye.
Trustee Vosper?
Aye.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Treasurer Lefada?
Aye.
Supervisor Acovetti?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 7F.
Approve a recommendation by Public Works to award the construction of the 2020 sanitary sewer CCTV and cleaning program project 1026-2020 to the lowest responsible bidder, DVM Utilities, Inc., at a total cost of $231,505. Public Works is also recommending the approval of the total project cost of $297,681.77 from GL 591-541-801.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Dominguez,
Support.
support by Trustee Vosper. Director Cottington.
This project We're going to be doing these type of projects approximately every other year. We like to. This is part of the maintenance of our whole overall sanitary system. It is important that we do it so we find bad spots in the sewer. The majority of this work that we're putting through this time it's not necessarily newer pipe, but it's the age is roughly at least 20 to 30 to 40 years old, but a lot of this has never been done before, and most of it needs to be done. This is going to take up a big part that hasn't been done, so when we start to do whole sections of the township in a rotation, it'll make better sense. So these are mostly subdivisions that were built in the early to mid 90s, and it's like I say, 20 to 30 years old now. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
Trustee Anderson.
What geographical area, I'm wondering, east, south, where are they at in relation to the township?
Can you see the shaded boxes?
Okay.
So it's more like mid to eastern side of the township, and some in the south.
Treasurer Lovato.
I looked at most of the data, and what I didn't find, and maybe I overlooked it, is besides the cleaning and videotaping, there's engineering from AEW, and I don't see a statement of work of what construction estimate cost, engineering is, contract administration. There's really no statement of work, really what's in those buckets, because I think it's important, because we have a statement of work from AEW for engineering, construction survey, construction administration, construction inspection and material testing on another program, and I know some of these stuff, based on the statement of work, it was never done. I have instances where it was never done. It basically says that they were going to interface with utilities, telephone companies, electric, and we've had engineering issues with telephone poles being in the middle of sidewalk. There's been here where they're saying that they're looking at and reviewing and certifying payrolls for administration, saying that when they receive an invoice from the contractor that's doing the work, if they have construction administration, which means they get invoiced and they invoice us, which to me isn't very efficient. It's just adding more bureaucracy, but they're certifying payrolls and everything. When I broached the question of inspection for the veterans facility, they didn't have any documentation of their own to support it. So I'm kind of at a loss to want to move forward. I know the program's important, but without a statement of work, what we're getting for probably another $60,000 from AEW and defined scope, I'm kind of leery because I don't know whether this is here today. To me, this is an important part of it. It's a lot of money.
I understand. The documentation will be done, and we will receive it. We work with them. I will say that these numbers are the extreme numbers. Some of this will be done by us, so these numbers will come down. For instance, some of the observation and the record keeping on our end. This is just like the worst scenario if we don't have the manpower available to help at the time.
I know, but without a statement of work and without it being defined, there's the risk of whether the township's responsible for it or AEW is responsible for it. And when there's a failure, it's very difficult because it's not defined when the project is awarded. And that's a risk to the township.
I understand your concern.
Any further comments from the board? I might want to make one. Maybe a better round of interest, Joseph.
Well, I'll defer to you if you can address what I heard Treasurer LaFleur say is not defining AEW's role, and perhaps you can speak to that, leaves room from an accountability standpoint, not just financial, but also who's responsible for what piece. So I know in times in the past, we had, the invoices get difficult. And so asking for clarification on the invoice brought with it additional costs to get very specific and detailed billing. So is the inclusion of AEW's oversight and review of invoices part of that process? In essence, what Treasurer Lafado was referencing, where they look at the scope of work that's done, verify it, send it on to us. And so is that something that our engineer can do? We have very competent project managers. This is not a multi-million-dollar job like some of the others. And so tens of thousands of dollars of unnecessary engineering fees seem like a waste. It just takes money out of your budget. Your people are very competent. Do we have an idea of what the scope of work we're asking for AEW? I know you say worst case, but like what percentage of the total project do you envision possibly leaning on AEW for some support for it?
To give you an exact percentage, I don't know, but for instance, the contract administration is 3%. We can certainly do that in-house and wipe that right off.
Say 3%?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
If you could, just, and maybe I'll just state it for you. I have had calls and I expect us to get more calls. So these subdivisions are 20 to 30 years old. The inspection and cleaning is necessary. We'll see if there's little number 1 or number 2 cracks now that may potentially be grouted and fixed before there's a sinkhole. But in doing so, you could see anywhere on that map lines on grass, lines on pavement to locate every structure. Most of these structures will be at grade, but occasionally you'll find sod over them. This will all be done in an easement, in all trenchless, so there's not going to be any heavy construction in people's yards. But if a sanitary structure is buried, you're going to raise it, tighten it up, make sure it's tight, which they are, and just explain that you're going to see marking on pavement here, and you're going to see a little bit of action, but not the heavy construction, I guess, that we're used to.
So we're trying to notify residents too when we have to go in their yards or in the front easement or the right-of-way. But we've been trying to notify them. We'll get better with that. But we are going into several subdivisions. The sanitary manholes, a lot of them are behind the sidewalk, between the sidewalk and their front of their house. So we are up in their yards. We are exposing them. And if they are buried, we are digging them up and raising them. Anything 4 inches or more, we're sending a team out there ahead of this project with our people and trying to raise these manholes to make them easier to get into and work into and be at grade in the future. Sanitary manholes are important. Every time you need to get into it, it's always time is of the essence. If you got to dig it out, you're losing time. So it's usually a plug main or something like that when you got to get into them. So it is important. It is part of the job. And we're excited on this project, not to change the subject, but we did get 6 bids on this and we were very excited about the prices. It seems like it's a very competitive business now, and we were glad to get that many bids on this, so we're happy with that.
Trustee Joseph.
Just a quick follow-up. Going back a few years, I know we dove in deep to the SAW grant. One of the benefits of the SAW grant was when the Water and Sewer Rate Advisory Board, you were in the room, we spec that one. And one of the things that was a big part of that was this, I think it's called geocaching, all of the points of contact around the system. Does that help you now that you're going in to find, before it was kind of like the Wild West, you didn't always know where you had access points. Are you fairly confident now when you go in that you have this data, this has all been accumulated, stored in kind of state-of-the-art equipment, and you're in a much better position, I assume,
We are.
to do this kind of detailed work? And that was part of a project that you championed many years ago. So it's paying dividends at this point?
It absolutely
If
is.
you
Our
could-
asset,
If you could too, when you touch on that, maybe touch a little on where the future's bringing this, maybe Director Johnson, about what's happening in 3D underground, and where the future is bringing our GIS model as well.
Yeah, we're excited. A lot of the stuff you guys allowed us to do, we're getting so much information put on now, like even down to the pictures of the manhole that had repairs, if there's been a repair in the pipeline. The same with the water main, where the valves are, how they're operational, when were the bolts changed. I mean, and we're constantly adding, every week we're adding information into our system, which is going to do nothing but make it better going forward for the crews ahead of me and after my time. It's a wonderful tool, and it's a great asset.
Yeah, don't be afraid to take a victory lap. That was something you advocated for very strongly. It's been several years, but you said then it was an important inclusion in that process, and it is for exactly this purpose. So it was good visionary work back then. It's paying dividends now. So nice work.
It's very nice. We can come back, and if you want to look at a particular run between manhole to manhole, you can click on it, and it'll take you right to the video, and you can watch the whole video from where it went from manhole to manhole, what's going on with the pipe, where the lateral leads go to each house, whoops, and everything such as that. It's just full, great information.
Great, thank you.
Treasurer Lafletta.
When we were going through the SAW grant project in 2017, basically I went through every invoice that came in on that project. And sometime around August of 2017, Deutsche was through the cleaning and videotaping. I used at lunchtime to take a quick spin around the township to see if there was any trucks or anything out there. See if there was any work done. We do that periodically, a couple times per week. By August, I have an issue with traffic control. By August, when just about all the physical work was done, there was an invoice, the invoice for about $30,000 to $70-some thousand worth of traffic control. When I talked to Lyle Wynn, I says, hey, this is what the invoice to date. There's no more trucks out, there's no more traffic control. And he says, well, that's the way we do business. It's a estimated quantity of one. And whether they're out there for 3 days or 3 months, we pay the quantity of one. My past life, I was held accountable by our attorneys, and the attorneys told me specifically, do not invoice something or for goods or product or goods that you don't supply. It's called fraud. Do not sign for goods or services that you don't receive. It's fraud. So just can't understand how we can get an invoice for something that we only partially got and pay the whole invoice. I don't understand if this is a contract or what, because it doesn't exist in the private sector. Because if somebody invoices you for something they don't provide you, it is fraud. It is fraud. Guarantee you it's fraud. So I don't know how this works in the public sector, but when you get invoiced for something, and then if you are the recipient and sign for something you didn't receive, you're also in trouble and guilty. So somebody explain the quantity of one if we don't get all the services that we should.
Trustee Domingue, and then we'll either I'll take a shot at that if Don does not want to. And I do want to make sure I circle back on it. I wasn't going to get into this discussion here tonight, but I do want to circle back on the fraud piece of that to make it very. Maybe I'll do it right now if you don't mind. The unit price. I'm very, very comfortable with this job from beginning to end. I'm very comfortable with the mission of it and how it was procured. The agenda packet has almost 200 pages in it. The contract book would make this 4 times as big if that was in there, and along with the construction documents. So this process, I'm very comfortable with. I'm very comfortable with the competitive bids we had. I'm comfortable with the design fee of 5.7%, which is in our contract. I'm comfortable with the contract administration, which is a real number for all construction projects that is necessary to be done. Sometimes those can be done in-house. A lot of times, you're better off to have the professional engineer do those. Those are extremely important when it comes to protecting the owner. I'm very comfortable with the review and recommendation fee along with the contingency. So overall, this project is exactly like every project that is built in the entire state of Michigan when it's a road, bridge, or sewer project. Every project that's built for any other municipality. I did want to circle around on the fraud piece of that, because I know you're not alluding to, it sounds like the process, you don't understand the process, or we're not getting the process of the unit prices. So at the end of the day, you're going to have a bid. This one's got X amount of bid items. They're going to add up to a low number. That low number is 231 in this instance. You're going to sign a contract for those units. Some of those units will be one, and some of those units will be estimates based on what's going to happen in the field. For example, 100, you're going to bid concrete by the square foot. So if you put in an extra 10 foot of concrete, you know what it's going to cost you as an owner. If you put in less concrete, you know what it's going to cost you as an owner. There are a lot of items that are bid as lump sums, and they're designed like that to protect the owner. And traffic control is one of them, and mobilization is one of them. These are standard ways to bid construction projects. If you're going to provide construction traffic safety, you put a number to provide traffic safety for the duration of that entire project, and you're bound by the contract to pay that one unit. And the details of that are laid out in standard specifications in the contract book, along with more specific specifications. So I want to just make it very clear that I circle around on that fraud word that you threw out. This is exactly the way every project is built and procured with the unit price contract in the state of Michigan, county, or any municipality, and I'm very, very comfortable with that process. I'm going to go to Trustee Domingue, and then I'll come back.
Real quick to Director Connington and Kelly. So when this cleaning and everything else, we're going to see through the pipes we have problems. If there's any infiltration, water leaking in, because if we find infiltration, that also raises our rate for sewer, right?
It does.
So if we find there's a leaky pipe or there's a stream running into it, so when that gets into the system, it goes to the meter, cause the rate. So this definitely will help if we find a problem and possibly lower some of our rates when it's metered, when it gets into the Detroit system. Am I correct in that, sir?
It would lower the bills, yes.
Yes, because there's not the infiltration, the extra water. So
Yeah.
that's what this all does, is look for the breaks, or if the pipe's bad, you get groundwater in.
This is how you find them, how you find the bad spots, by TVing them.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments before I come around to Treasurer LaFleur?
I'm not against this. I know it's important. The only thing is, it's important to define the statement of work, because without, being really confident in how it goes, doesn't really define the responsibility between our engineering, our consulting engineer, and the township water department. And I think it's very important to define it. And I don't see any reason why we could not wait 2 weeks to define this. The other thing is I would like our legal counsel to explain to me why in the public sector we can pay for something that we don't get, and it's not considered wrong or illegal. It just doesn't equate in my world. But there's nothing wrong with this project. The only thing I would like is, because if you look at engineering, you've got engineering down here, and the scope of work for engineering is providing the specs for project quotes, everything else. This is, a lot of this engineering has already been done with a previously approved cost. So I'm just really confused, and I'll bet you nobody can tell me right now exactly. I got a list of what AEW is putting in the past project. what we're getting for engineering on this project. And I would like it defined, and I don't see a reason why it can't wait 2 weeks to define it. It's not the end of the world. It puts the responsibility where it belongs. And I know that Supervisor Akavetti says, well, we add and we subtract. Well, this project, supposedly, if it was an engineering project, that we have detailed drawings of these sewer lines that we're looking at going through and cleaning, that those drawings should have a dimension from one end to the next, so that we know that what we have in this quote is what's on the drawing. We should be pretty close to being accurate, but we still have a contingency in here which tells us we have doubt in our engineering accuracy. That's what you're telling me. We have a doubt of our engineering accuracy. So it only makes sense to define the statement of work.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Just a question, I don't know, Mr. Acvetti or Mr. Coddington, in terms of industry standards, I understand where Treasurer LaFatta is talking about a range, and I was complimentary of like our knowledge of the system, but I don't know how you could be quite that accurate. You know, is there an industry standard in terms of when the bid went out? Because you have all of the potential vendors, you know, are looking at the same job. It would have to include, I would assume, the spirit of what Treasurer LaFatta is talking about. What is it that you're going to be cammering, and how many length, you know, of sewer line and so forth. So we have those numbers. I don't know, that's not in debate, I don't think. And in terms of the percentage, you're looking at a worst case scenario of 3%. Does that fall within industry standards for you in terms of in terms of how the bid was even put together?
It is. It's got to be. That's probably all throughout the state of Michigan. That's got to be right, a number that's right on. And I want to touch a little bit on the contingency money. A project like this, where you may come into needing the contingency money, if you get into an area that needs a lot of heavy cleaning, and why they give you a unit price for that, but if you get into an area that has more than what they've allocated for it, then you have to get into the contingency, because they have to make several passes with this nozzle to keep going back and forth to get that dirt out of there, or what have you, stone dirt or whatever's in the pipe. Other than that, contingencies is not a big issue on this type of job, other than heavy cleaning.
That's the whole reason you're going down there, in essence, is to find out what, as Trustee DeMig pointed out, if you have infiltration, you are probably going to find debris, dirt, sand, whatever has sort of leached into there, and now that's the whole reason to go in with the cleaning and the cammering, correct?
Right.
So, in your opinion, contingencies are within industry standards here?
Yes.
And the feedback that you get from the vendor, should you run into a problem where they start going into those contingencies, is that something you'll be made aware of as well?
That would be brought up before it's even addressed. I mean,
So
there would be a meeting on that. If there was a problem, it would be addressed before it was ever even approved.
I see. Thank you.
If I could elaborate a little bit on that. The accuracy of the design to figure out what that contingency is, or what that difference in quantity, potential quantity paid versus bid, it depends on the job and the item. So some items, especially with the things you can see, if you want to put in a 20-foot by 20-foot brick slab, we all know that's 20 foot. We all know the square footage there. We can figure out how much stone is going to be under it. You know what exactly happens. When it gets more complicated is when we get into large concrete pieces or underground construction. So the estimate here, there's 17 items on the job. The engineer is estimating 68,900 lineal feet of cleaning at the unit price for low bids at a unit price of 0.9 feet. So if we get out there and the 6 to 12-inch sanitary sewer ends up being 60,000 lineal feet of cleaning instead of 68.9, We only pay for 60,000 feet at 90 cents per foot.
The unit pricing doesn't change?
That's correct. The actual unit price number never, ever, ever changes. The only thing that always changes, except for lump sums, always get paid as number one, as an entire one. And there is great details in standard specifications and supplemental respects that detail very, very clearly, sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40 pages of what bonds, insurance, and mobilization equals, what traffic control equals, in how those items get paid, and it's in the contract. So when you get underground, you get more uncertainty. So hence, more protection for the owner to bid by the unit price. In this instance, it's even worse, or more uncertainty in that is heavy cleaning. We don't know until we stick a camera down there if we are going to need to spend an extra 5 hours on a 1,000-foot piece of line out of the 68,000 feet. So the industry or the engineer uses their best standards of how many feet and how many hours is it going to take to, or should it take to do this. So they plug a number in 40 hours of heavy cleaning. They give us a unit price per hour. In this instance, it's 175. So that number could go up and down based on what we find. And that's kind of a quick snapshot as to the deeper you get in the ground, and the less certainty on these actual units and how many lineal feet are going to go in. Treasurer Lafata.
I'll buy into the contingency to cut this short. What I still don't understand is we're looking at $43,000 worth of engineering fees in here, and we still don't have a defined statement of work, what we're going to get in those categories.
Well, that's page one of what they put together there.
It's really not defined, like, it's not saying that they're preparing construction. Engineering for this project says prepare construction plans, coordinate bid specifications. So some of this stuff for engineering, according to this project, in this project's already been done. So, and the engineering percentage is the same for this project as it is the one that we're talking about right now. So I'm trying to understand the statement of work for this project. And I don't think it's too much to ask for $43,000 because it determines responsibility. And $43,000 on a $200-some-thousand project, is quite a sum. And if we don't know what it is, you can't hold somebody responsible for something that is not documented in a project. If you don't have a statement of work of what you're going to get, you can't hold somebody responsible. And I don't know why we can't take a week or so to do that and then kick this off, because I feel a lot better. I'm not, it's just not the right way to do business.
Any further comments from the board? I am very opposed to pushing this back 2 meetings. There is this contract in front of us, which we would need to execute. Probably has a hold period on it, where how long these bids or these prices are good for. I don't know if you know that number off the top of your head. I can peek through the contract book, along with the how it impact the schedule. When they want to get going.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on the schedule. I'm more concerned with the colder weather coming. We have to use water to do the TV and the cleaning. And 2 weeks is a lot of time right now, this time of year is all. So that can't be freezing up these trucks out there. Them trucks are $500,000 piece of equipment. So
it's got a 90-day substantial completion. So
yes. We want to get it done this season before winter sets in.
And I'm very comfortable with, like I said, every item, the work product, the whole smash, and I think we should proceed. Any further comments of the board or comments from the public? Motion, Trustee Joseph.
Just, I speak fluent Lafata. I know I'm very comfortable as him, getting angry down there. I I would ask this, I'm going to vote yes on this project and get started right away. I think there's some valid points being made about accountability, and in the spirit of working together, I think there's no reason we can't answer those as the project is going. And Mr. Covington, I have faith in you. I'd like you to bring back to the board if we run into problems and we run into issues. In particular, it's been 4 years, and as soon as you say AEW, you got sparks on this board. So I think you could mitigate a lot of that by just bringing forward any concerns that you have regarding the engineering fees, and watch those, and maybe bring some peace to the board by giving us updates on this. You can do that through emails. You don't have to come to the board in a department report. But I appreciate and respect Treasurer LaFata. He goes through these books. Again, it's not about anything but what he's been trained his whole career. It's not personal. I know he feels strongly about it, and if you could alleviate some of that as the project is going without delaying it, because 2 weeks makes a whole lot of difference. You start getting to the back end of this 90-day project. So I agree with you. I don't want to see it delayed, but maybe you could help alleviate some things on the board and bring forward any concerns you have.
I will ask that we get the reports, the work product back as soon as we can every week, and I will forward that stuff to all of you.
Thank you.
Treasurer LaFata.
Is it possible to get a defined statement of work if we kick this off within the next week, so that if we can regurgitate this at the next board meeting?
That's kind of what this contract is, Treasurer
Well,
LaFata.
the contract doesn't like it. I'll show you what AEW's put in other projects as far as what's in the engineering and everything else. That contract doesn't really.
Well, we're trying to clean about 100,000 feet of sewer.
I understand that, but the engineering part of it requires a statement of work. Engineering always requires a statement of work to understand who's responsible. And I will show you this. You've seen it before. Lyle Lynn's given me 2 or 3 of them. In fact, he sent this one I've got right now to the township board. I'm surprised nobody's actually read it to see what's in it. But it's confusing when I'm looking at engineering, and like I said, some of this engineering has already been done on a previous approved expense. So it doesn't balance. And if we're going to move forward with it, I don't have a problem, but I can't understand why AEW tomorrow or the next day can't put together a statement of work in each bucket. They've got a cost in here that equals $43,000. What are we getting for the 5.7% in engineering? What responsibilities do they have? What are they getting for contract administration for 3%? What responsibilities do they have?
Just so you know too, that this 43 is an adjustment to the original, we're not adding this on to the original motion from the last board meeting. Not adding it, I forget the first one was 25,000 or whatever that was. We're not adding 43 onto that. We're adjusting it 25 to 43 or whatever the number was. So we're not adding it on.
Yeah, it's considerably less than the first time we came to the board.
So some of the work already is done, you were correct, it's already built in.
And they've been paid for some of the work that's already been done, and invoiced for.
I understand what you're looking for. Statement of work.
Thank you. We have a motion by trustee Mink, support by trustee Vosberg to approve item 7F as submitted. Clerk Berry, Deputy Clerk Meiser, please call the roll.
Trustee Deming.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7G.
Approve a recommendation from the Department of Public Safety to purchase an upgraded camera system from Able Electronics in the amount of $74,440.74 from GL number 205-301-907.
Do I have a motion? Motion by trustee.
Sure.
Support by trustee Anderson. Director Connor.
What we're asking here is video systems in and around the police station, which include interior, cell area, prisoner area, and then security cameras throughout the building. to be upgraded and replaced. Our current system is over 12 years old. It actually was a reinstall and then an add-on as we moved into the building. It's antiquated. A lot of it is analog video that we have to manage. What we're asking to do is upgrade. This solution that we picked is a conglomeration of working with our IT and some outside vendors. We actually put this out for bid. When we got the bids back from Mitten, there were aspects that we didn't understand and we educated ourselves on. So this price, once we got with our IT company, our IT vendor, kind of cleaned it up, and we got what we wanted out of it, and we added some functionality that we didn't think we could get. As you know, we have 3 outbuildings, 3 fire stations. This integrates all those cameras into one spot now and under one platform. As far as the video that we have to release and produce, and on the prisoner side, we had to manually sit down and blur faces, remove names, redact information that was recorded. This platform now allows us to do that with much greater ease. And then again, it integrates with the 2 outbuildings that we, the fire stations that we monitor all within this place. So I'd like to say that what we're asking for today also is we saved about $30,000 from the original bids that came in through Mitten. We reduced it, and I think we've got a pretty long-term solution for the building that gives us some manageable opportunities as far as user.
Treasurer Lefado.
Does that make us almost contact compatible, where we can view, like at dispatch, all of our cameras from one location?
We have that ability now, and we're building and it's expanding on that. This component does meet that. We currently monitor the cameras here at this facility, the external security cameras. We recently added both fire stations to where our dispatchers, so our plan and our capital plan is a video wall similar to what they have at Comtech with just Chesterfield Township buildings and structures.
Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, I just wonder, I've been out of education now for a few years, and I was there was often talks about a passive view camera of various school buildings by law enforcement. You know, there was always that. We're probably at those places, those conferences too. Would this setup permit something like that? Could it be added to it, or you know?
No, this would not. The issue that you're speaking, we have access to both Anchor Bay and Lance Cruise.
Okay.
We have to go through a portal. The issue you have there is we can't record them because obviously there's privacy controls that the school's got to have for students. But should an event occur at a school, we have the ability to log in, and then we have unlimited access to whatever their camera systems are. Different platform, different operation, but it is managed at the same location within our dispatch center.
Any further comments for Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, just real quick, Chief, this enhances safety for sure, but the question about, I'm curious to know, when do you think it pays for itself when you get to the hours it takes to redact and do some of the video editing, you know, type of things? You're obligated, I think, if I'm wrong, I remember that the lowest priced employee or hourly rate employee to satisfy a FOIA is what you're going by. You could be hours and hours and hours satisfying a FOIA. I'm assuming this cuts that process down quite a bit.
Absolutely, and that was one of the things that we learned in this process was how we could better do that. The minute, once this camera is up in operation, there's going to be some restructuring, and that's actually going to free up a sergeant to do other jobs instead of doing one of these dedicated solely to redact and release this video.
Great, thank you.
Comments from the public? Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Anderson to approve item 7G as submitted. Deputy Clerk Nysa, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee Vosper?
Aye.
Trustee Domingue?
Aye.
Treasurer Lefado?
Aye.
Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye, motion passes. Item,
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Christian. Item 8 is the addendum. Item 9 is public comments. I would like to run something by the board real quick. We do have a closed session with an action item coming out of closed session. If we would like to, we could move items 9 and 10, public comment and board comment, to right before adjournment. If you'd like to do that, I do not expect the closed session to be terribly long.
Mr. Supervisor, I think that's a great idea. There may be some comments from the audience on the closed session item, and that would give an opportunity to weigh in. I do think it's a short item to discuss, so I would support that.
It'd be a motion to table items 9 and items 10 until later in the meeting after item 12.
Amending the agenda.
That's correct, just a motion to table till later in this meeting, until after item 12A. Motion by Supervisor Acovetti, supported by Trustee Joseph, to table items 9 and 10 till later in the meeting after item 12A. It's a non-debatable motion. Deputy Clerk Nice, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFatta. Trustee Bosford.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demain.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 11 is closed session. 11A.
To consider the purchase of real property pursuant to Section 8D of the Michigan Open Meetings Act.
Do I have a motion to
So moved.
closed session? Motion by Trustee Domingue,
Support.
supported by Trustee Joseph to enter closed session. Recognize it, please call the roll. We will be leaving, the board is going to be leaving and we'll be coming back in. Trustee,
Trustee Demain.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Bosford.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFatta. Supervisor Acovetti.
aye. We are in closed session at 8:40 p.m. Yeah, fishbowl. Make sure it's muted.
We had some problems with what Joseph had. I don't understand some of these. I saw a little bit, I don't know if you read, Case in the Voice, Jim Black wrote about a month ago. It basically mentioned that basically it was an article saying the vote for it and his things. Right. Voters are known as a pretty constitutional active group. They're aware of what Trump was done. Air standards and water standards. And you and I went through that. Some other things. I thought it was a great article.
added everything that and so I wrote to my wife saying, I think this boy article did a great job, included things that I didn't like about Joe. And said, keep writing. And written my response, and written another guy that responded the opposite. And the response was basically come out and said, Jim Black is just a Marxist destroying all Marxism. What's this got to do with what the article, I mean, it was just character assassination. This is crazy. And this is the type of stuff that's out there that.
It's exactly character assassination.
No.
much for your? Did you look?
Good meeting here.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Michelle, ready? Do I have a motion to re-enter open session?
Motion to reopen open session.
Motion by trustee Joseph to re-enter open session. Is there support here?
Support.
Support by trustee Domingue. Deputy Clerk, Nice, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Bosford. Treasurer Lovato. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Agnew.
Aye. We are back in open session at 8:57 p.m.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to offer a motion to approve the retention of Allen and Associates to perform an appraisal for $5,000 for a potential purchase of township property.
Motion by trustee Joseph.
Support.
Support by trustee Domingue. Discussion. Comments from the public. State your name and address for the record.
Joe David, live on Sutton.
Hit the button, please.
Hit the button, Joe. Joe David, I live on Sutton. Basically, you met in session as to the property that I guess you're going to try to purchase. And I got a feeling it's probably Salt River Golf Course, but I'm just wondering why it takes an outside appraiser to determine what you're going to pay, if that's what it's about. You've got a assessing department here that is probably more knowledgeable than anybody else as to what property value is or should be. Looking for an outside appraiser, to me, sounds like it's somebody that you're looking to justify however much money you want to spend, regardless of the value of it. I'd feel more comfortable if you involved the in-house appraiser and use them and let them come back and say, here's what this property is worth to you. Not an appraiser that's going to say, well, this property is worth this much to somebody else. That's why they should pay so much money. I think I got a problem with having an outside appraiser determine what you should pay for somebody else's property. That's up to the seller to determine what he thinks his property is worth, and you to determine how much you think you should pay for it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Trustee Joseph, I'll back you up if I need to. Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I think the comment that was made, the question posed to the board was spot on. And the short answer to that is the property that is being considered is a extremely complicated piece that involves the possibility for the township to go down a number of paths, including possible donation, possible grants. There's a very small window of opportunity for the township to take advantage of this potential piece of property, and this particular appraisal needs to be consistent with the township interest. It is not something that you're negotiating from a buyer to a seller, because quite frankly, we're not at that point. We're really at a very developmental stage, and the risk associated with it is a $5,000 appraisal that gives us very clear insight on a potential path. And I can say, for me, anything to do with the acquisition of property will be explained in the most intimate of detail to everyone's satisfaction, but you're not there yet. This appraisal is a unique appraisal that allows us to look at a number of options that are very unique to this particular piece of property. So the risk for the township was really the discussion point here, and the next stage is an appraisal that costs $5,000. It is not a typical buyer-seller because we're just simply not there. I hope I captured that.
Any further comments from the public or the board? We have a motion by trustee Joseph, support by trustee Domingue to approve item 12A. We got a public comment? No.
Yes.
Come on up. On 12A, not, you're on item 12A? To the appraisal.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not.
Motion by trustee Joseph, support by trustee Domingue to approve item 12A as submitted. Deputy Clerk Nysel, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Domingue?
Aye.
Trustee Vosper?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Treasurer LaFava?
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti?
Aye. Motion passes. Going backwards a little bit to item number 9, public comment. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. You don't want to use up your whole 5 minutes without speaking.
Before I start, I'd like to make a request. I need an additional minute, please.
That would require a board member to suspend the rules. If somebody wants to make that motion, I'll entertain it.
Supervisor, this has come up a couple of times. I don't know that it's appropriate. Really, when we're in campaign season, this is an issue that I think could be problematic, Mr. Speaker. No disrespect to you, but I think we will be in a position to extend for all candidates, and I can't support that.
Without a motion, I can't do it. Your time, start his time over right now. Your time is starting right now.
Good evening, Township Board and Chesterfield Township residents. My name is John Spica, and I'm running to be the next treasurer in Chesterfield Township. This election is about people over party. In this township, as I speak in the mic, that we own residents are deciding whether Chesterfield Township is going to move forward in the next 4 years with new leadership or stay the same and get worse under the current leadership. In my opinion, we need new leadership, new blood on this board in this township. We need elected officials that can lead, that are ethical, trustworthy, truthful, and dependable. We need elected officials that will show up for work and do the job that they promised the residents that they were going to do. We need elected officials that not only point out the challenges we're going to face in the coming years, but are willing to bring people from both sides of the aisle to the table to find real solutions for the problems we are going to face. Elected officials need to lead by example. As residents, we need to demand excellence from our elected officials. We should demand that only the best of the best get elected to sit on the township board. We should never settle for okay in a candidate or elected officials. I'm on a job interview with the residents, but our elected officials are on a job performance review with the residents. We have already seen how inept this board has been in the last 4 years. Should each of our elected officials be re-elected for another 4 years? I'm here to tell you, no way. Our loving and caring township can't afford 4 more years of Clerk Berry, Supervisor Akavetti, and Trustee Vosper. Akavetti, our incompetent, ego-driven supervisor, is running a rubber stamp candidate named Elliott for the treasurer's office.
Ask yourself why. Why did Accavetti not support Paula Fata for re-election? Why did Accavetti politically assassinate and go after Paula Fata, a member of his own Republican Party? Paula Fata, a very ethical, hardworking individual that showed up for work, safeguarded the taxpayers' money, and did an outstanding job in the treasurer's office. I will tell you why. Supervisor Accavetti wants complete control of the taxpayers' checkbook. He wants all the taxpayers' money with no oversight, and the fourth vote that will give him complete control of this board. He wants no checks, no balances, and no questions asked. Supervisor Accavetti wants loyalty in the treasurer's office from his hand-picked candidate. No questions asked, a blank check, and a rubber stamp, and that rubber stamp candidate is Elliott. That's why Accavetti and his family has donated thousands of dollars for Accavetti's campaign. Where you see an Accavetti sign, you typically see an Elliott sign go on top of his. Elliott is bought and paid for by Dan Accavetti and family. Her loyalty lies with Accavetti and not with the residents of Chesterfield. Elliott is not going to safeguard the taxpayers' money, but just the opposite, and give Accavetti an open checkbook to do whatever he wants with your hard-earned money. This is not how the system is supposed to work. This is why we have Safeguard. I want all the residents to go to macombgov.org. In the search bar, type in Elections Department, go under Campaign Finance, search by candidate, type in Elliott, and then use the letter K in the first name, and go under the documents. Everything you need to know is right there. Follow the money. Look at who donated to her campaign and the amounts that were donated. Look at who donated to Accavetti and Vosburgh. Typically, the same people donated to all three campaigns. All four of these individuals, Clerk Berry, Supervisor Accavetti, Trustee Vosburgh, and Elliott, are working together to get elected and to continue the destructive path that Chesterfield is on. Remember, a vote for Elliott is a vote for Accavetti. We have a clerk that works less than part-time hours and collects a full-time salary of $88,628.41 plus benefits. How is this ethical? How is this behavior even acceptable? I see this as stealing from the taxpayers and unethical behavior. I also see this as grounds for termination and not re-electing Clerk Berry, Supervisor Accavetti. Supervisor Accavetti has failed Chesterfield Township. He has grown the government in the township on the backs of the taxpayers, closed Fire Station 2, went ahead with the Formighty spray and using Roundup, a known cancer-causing spray, against the will of the people, tried to sneak in a cell tower on Forbes and Jefferson, a missing township board tape. He has left Chesterfield Township with no insurance coverage if an employee brings a gun to work and we have an unfortunate incident. How irresponsible is that for a supervisor of the township? The taxpayers will be fully liable to pay the bill. Accavetti has failed Chesterfield Township, and now Chesterfield needs to fire Accavetti. Trustee Vosburgh has tried to silence the residents.
Any further board comment or any further public comment?
Terry Weston, 28605 Wales Drive. I just wanted to come to the board and let them know that I have been appointed to the Veterans Affairs Commission. I am a commissioner now, and I want to offer my services to Chesterfield. So if you know anybody that is a veteran that needs help or assistance, please send them my way. I will be providing my business cards and some flyers in the near future. And I just wanted to say thank you to Miss Merriweather for giving me the opportunity. She sent the announcement to me and let me know that I would be a good candidate, and I am now a Veterans Affairs Commissioner, and I would love to help my veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weston. Any further public comment?
Hello, Robert Surgot, 50515. Check 1, 2. You don't have to do this in other communities. Robert Surgot, 50515, Bay Run North, Chesterfield Township, Michigan. 20-year resident. I finally came here because on social media, saw Paddle Park I'm excited about. But I've also seen some people that are getting taxpayer-paid insurance not wearing masks. I don't care about the trustees, but if you work for the taxpayers, your insurance comes from us. It's $43,000 at your age if you got hospitalized, and that comes out of my pocket and all of their pockets. You can also get employees sick. That's $43,000 a person on average. There's an 80% increase in southeastern Michigan. And I would just like to see some better judgment used by Clerk Barry, who's been posting posts of, I like the absentee ballot posts going out, but I don't like seeing no mask on when you're getting my insurance. When we're paying the insurance, that's socialism, because you're a government entity and you're collecting it. And you gotta take responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any further public comment?
Kathy Elliott, 27442 Clark Circle. I am a candidate for Chesterfield Treasurer. Today I am here to address my opponent's inappropriate and continued use of this podium to run a smear campaign that, to no surprise, ends with his asking for the residents' vote. Many people have urged me to respond to him, and so my response is this. Instead of conspiracy theories, campaign rhetoric, and silly statements about things such as me using whiteout, I think it is time for my opponent to be transparent about himself. You see, shortly after he moved to Chesterfield this past year, my opponent filed to run for what is now his 5th attempt at a political office. Playing political games with people's lives is simply a race to the bottom, serving to benefit no one. The accusations my opponent has have no merit. My dear friends and neighbors can rest assured that I have stayed true to myself and my beliefs. For those of you who have not had a chance to chat with me, I want you to know that my passion for this community began during the days of the Great Recession, when so many of my neighbors lost their homes. That was long before this current board. Since that time, I have focused on advocating for the types of jobs and careers that will undoubtedly provide a good quality of life to the people of this township, including my opponent, whose private sector career is in car sales. If you have seen my campaign pieces with photographs of planes, these photographs are part of my story. They were taken by my teenage daughter, who has grown up sitting in our backyard watching those aircraft fly over. My daughter is blind in one eye. She realizes that she will never fly these planes, so she photographs them, and I am very proud of her. She dreams that someday she will be employed at one of the local aerospace companies. My young daughter and her talented and gifted friends have given me a new perspective regarding Chesterfield's unique position as a community here with Selfridge Air National Guard Base at the south end. My dedication to Chesterfield's success is due to my close bonds to the very people in this room who are like me, my husband, and my children. We call it our home. I will continue to work to keep Chesterfield in a position to weather any storm. I will tell people who inquire that Chesterfield is open for business. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
David Fuller, 29681 Jennifer Drive. Hello everyone, I'm David Fuller Jr. I've been a resident of Chesterfield, Michigan since 2003, so that will be 17 going on 18 years. I live by 24 Mile in Gratiot. My family moved here when I was 5 years old. I am now 22 years old. I grew up through the L'Anse Creuse Public School District, and I also graduated from L'Anse Creuse High School North in 2016. As I grew older over the years, Chesterfield has become my home, my community. As a worker, as a student, as a neighbor, as a community resident. I am now a senior at the University of Michigan Dearborn, and I'll be graduating in December, pursuing my Bachelor's of Science in Public Health. Today I'm here as a concerned resident in response to the current issues that we have in our community. I've been watching the township meetings. Chesterfield has a growing, dynamic population of residents moving to the area to start families, pursue job opportunities, and enjoy their retirement years. Now is the time to implement real sustainable changes that will allow residents to see the return of their investment The main way to do so is by investing in our community initiatives that everyone can benefit from. Some of the issues that we have are related to public safety, the township's urban planning, infrastructure, parks and recreation, community health, and human services assistance, and the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Public safety is an issue in Chesterfield and the surrounding areas because of human trafficking, and young girls and women being harassed at local grocery and retail stores. As you know, we are close to the Blue Water Bridge in Port Huron, and many women have been walking alone, specifically along the overpass, which is already a dangerous pathway for residents and pedestrians. Now, the issue is not why were the women walking or shopping alone. Maybe they were getting something to eat at a local restaurant, or stopping to get groceries at Meyer on 23 Mile. The issue is not if the women were being aware of their surroundings or if they have protective weapons with them. The issue is how we cannot keep our women and young girls safe and protected from threats, and also human trafficking predators. Public safety is an issue when it comes to pedestrian and motorist safety as well. Motor vehicle accidents involving pedestrians is increasing each year, according to the Michigan Auto Law report on the top 20 most dangerous intersections in Michigan for 2019. 23 Mile on I-94 had 94 crashes and 24 injuries. That puts us at number 12 for that intersection. There's a desperate need to invest in the infrastructure of the community when it comes to our roads and transportation safety. The residents deserve to have bike paths and bike lanes on major streets that provide a safe way for cyclists to travel on major streets. And also more sidewalks that continuously connect our major streets and businesses to the residents in their subdivisions as well. Also, it will be winter soon, so that means we need timely snow removal in subdivisions and on dirt roads in rural areas. We also need bus stops with pedestrian crosswalks and streetlights along major residential and commercial areas in the community, because that is crucial to improving our mass transit system and connecting to nearby cities. Concerning the Parks and Recreation issue, on the west side of I-94, there is a lack of walking trails, neighborhood parks, and other community spaces within a walking distance for families to access. Most children are left to ride their bikes along the subdivision streets and sidewalks, and on busy roads where there are also a lack of sidewalks and streetlights. There is also a growing population of people without a stable housing in Chesterfield. While this pandemic has affected many households, some have lost their homes, and others have been seeking temporary shelters at various locations in the township. Even before the pandemic, our township has struggled with providing affordable housing options that accommodate people with a lower socioeconomic status. We need to invest in funding a wraparound community center that has a shelter, healthcare services, employment assistance, and other social services to help people get back on their feet. As for the COVID-19 pandemic, I have not seen any resources, initiatives, or funding that has been directly invested in assisting community residents. Rent assistance, utility assistance, food insecurity, and most importantly, the COVID-19 testing that is more accessible are just a few of the things we expect our elected officials to be working on. I look forward to seeing what is in the works to create tangible changes that promote health equity for our residents and addresses the issues I just explained. We need elected officials to care about the concerns of residents like me and will be transparent on what issues are being addressed and the outcomes they are advocating for. Real change can only happen when the community is consulted and actively involved in the process of community planning and development. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Very nice job. Any further public comment?
Hello, my name is Kendall Briggs, 49485 80 Black Drive East. I'm here today because I did not like the response that Michelle Merriweather received at the last meeting. She spoke on my behalf, sharing my story and similar issues going on in this area. There was a comment that was made that I believe was very unacceptable. From the words of David Joseph, and I quote, "Almost a profiling of potential victims is what seems to be happening, and individuals who are maybe coming out of the store in a dimly lit parking lot that are paying attention to their car keys or their cart or anything else makes themselves very vulnerable to these individuals who approach under a I'm just looking for help, but it really seems more like they are being assessed for how big of a victim they may become." He then changed his direction and said, and I quote, "Sometimes it gets a little tricky because individuals they sort of camp out in a county easement, and the difficulty of enforcing ordinance is quite a challenge. There are a couple reasons why I do not agree nor support this response. First being the fact that he was giving a sense of victim shaming, saying that women get distracted by other things when in reality, those things are simply unavoidable when heading to the car. I believe that the point of what Michelle was trying to say is that there are threats to women's safety all over the place, in stores, and definitely not just limited to outside. My personal experience occurred inside of the store, and that seems to be a repeating pattern for others I have heard from as well. Secondly, direction was changed and switched more towards panhandling. These offenders are oftentimes not on the county easements like stated by David, and they are actually occurring in the stores or outside in the parking lot. I understand not wanting much involvement due to bad publicity, stirring up other issues, or wrong accusations. However, there is no excuse to keep allowing this type of behavior. I personally believe that having such a big issue like this one, it needs to receive a much greater and heavier response. With Chesterfield Township being 51% women population, it is almost like a given fact that we should feel safe when going into the public. However, that is simply not the case for many women, and I feel like that is a huge issue. We have a right as women and as human beings to shop comfortably inside of a store, and I feel like that is something that should not be taken lightly. With that being said, I did not get any sense of protection or action being taken from the board at all. My experience was a very scary ordeal, and once I shared my story with the township residents, I was swarmed with hundreds of comments and shares of women with several similar stories. With taking matters into my own hands, I am thankful that Michelle Merriweather reached out to me, has set up meetings with myself, the Director of Public Safety, and she has aggressively gone after the 4 retail corporations in Chesterfield to demand reform. One of which included Meyer, which to my understanding, a meeting was held, which was taken over, and we were not even invited to, which was not right, as I believe nobody can share my story as properly as the one that it happened to. Moving forward, we are expecting better responses from the board regarding the issue of women's safety. I do thank Brad for his support in reaching out, however, myself and many others believe that this is an ongoing issue between the community, the board, and public safety. And just to make you aware, Michelle and I have formed a large women's group to address issues moving forward, and you will be hearing from us regularly regarding actions and things being taken place against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Joe Kato, Chair of Sutton. I wanted to follow up with basically what my comments were when you came back from the closed session regarding an appraiser. And this goes again, I guess, picking up more property. I'm thinking it's probably the golf course. But I wanted to bring up and have everybody recognize the fact that how many projects have been started in this township for the public that have not still been completed. The paddle bark was 4 years in the making. We still have an obligation to clean up the river, which the supervisor, I guess, has said now it's too big of a job for him. Yet we're predicating that everything else along the river is using the river as a destination or whatever you want. Basically, everything's connected to the river, but we're not putting the money or the time into cleaning the river. The Salt River Bridge was completed over years ago. The south exit or entrance for the pedestrian part of it has been a problem. It is still a problem with nothing been done about putting it in a way, a safe exit along it. We can walk along Jefferson without having to walk on the side of the road. I think it was in May when I sent something to the supervisor about a suggestion how to take care of that. Still see nothing done on that. What's the status of the nature center? It was bought assuming there was going to get a grant. I've not heard anything. Did we get a grant for that? And beyond that, what is the actual plan on that? How much money is going to put in, and what's it going to look like, and what's it going to take? I know you're going to have to do something to the interior if it's going to be a nature center there. I know you're working with the EPA about doing something with the river, about dredging the river along there, but that's about it. But there's a lot of money that's needed to complete that and keep it ongoing. And then, basically, you close the Veterans Park. That was supposed to be transferred in back of the memorial, the Marine Memorial here. All we got there is a cannon. You got a Veterans Park that's sitting there vacant. I think I haven't been there in a while, but there's not much going out there. You're getting into all these things, and they're probably good ideas, but I think somebody's got to keep in mind what's it going to cost, and what's the timing, and what's it going to cost to, keep the maintenance going. Buying into all these projects is great, but somebody's got to face reality. Is if you're going to bring them to fruition, it's going to cost you money, and it's going to take time to get them done. And why take on other projects that aren't going to be complete either at this time? I think the board should keep this in mind. Nobody's put any plan together for any of these things as to what the completion is going to be on any of those things itemized, or put any timing or cost on them. I think it's something that this board owes this township. If you're going to get into this, take on all of this responsibility, give us an idea when it's going to get done, give us an idea how much it's going to cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further board comment or public comment? Going once, going twice. Moving on to board comment, Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. There were some serious concerns, they are taken serious from our speakers or residents that chose to speak tonight. Instead of rehashing everything, beginning of this meeting, probably about 20 minutes, the Director of Public Safety did address some of the concerns that are going on here. What is being done between our department and our retail partners, and the course of actions that probably recommendations. I'm not going to replow all those right now, but I would advise you to take the time to go to YouTube once it's uploaded and see that part of the meeting, Transparent Chesterfield, and see what was discussed, and take that into consideration with the concerns you do have, and that would be a starting point on this discussion. Where can we go from there? Recommendations, and what has been handled so far, and what we can do in the future. Second thing, we got one more meeting before the election, so good night, everyone.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll start with Mr. Kadich and the concerns that he raises. I can't address all of the things that you laid out. Certainly, you're somebody that comes to meetings, and you know that each one of the projects that you mentioned has had a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of discussion on those issues, and contentious discussion, because I think we all, the 7 habits of highly effective people, and begin with the end in mind. Dr. Covey talks about beginning with the end in mind, and you're certainly coming to the podium saying, what is the end game? Unfortunately, just trying to be fair to some of the debates that we've had and the opposing, I tend to go in that direction with you. These deals are very complex, and they're very difficult to put all the pieces together. So to put the township in the best possible position without exposing us to risk is a real trick. And I really do appreciate Treasurer LaFada's sort of reports back on what the coffers look like, and how do we pay for these things, and how do we do these things. The difficulty becomes if you miss an opportunity on a piece of property, and then you also have people who are very, very upset about the amount of growth that has happened here. So trying to preserve what I think most of us would agree makes Chesterfield great involves a stewardship of available properties and proper management of township-owned properties. This issue that we went into closed session tonight is not going to, I'm not going to be able to come back to you in 2 weeks or even 2 months and say, this is the end, this is the cost, these are the steps. This one really is a real opportunity, and I don't think it would have happened had there not been some degree of peace and an olive branch extended that afforded the supervisor and I to sit down and talk about things. It was much appreciated. I think we're in a place where we have the potential to bring good opportunities forward, and then before massive amounts of money are committed in your name, we'll have a full, and we'll beat each other up again. That's what you deserve. That's what we should do, and that's what we will do. The speaker, I don't know the order. I kind of write them down and then I get front and back, and I'm not sure which one, but I try to address everybody who poses something directly at me. And I guess I'll go to the comments regarding Ms. Riggs, and I want to apologize if there was any offense taken at the idea of victim shaming, as you put it. The idea that you are not to be safe simply because you're, as I referenced, the keys and so forth, is not in any way the attempt that I was trying to make. It actually comes specifically from some self-defense coursework that was taught by our Chesterfield PD. And Captain McNair and Captain Franks talking about, I think the lecture was somewhere along the line of being a harder target, and that predators typically are looking for individuals, male and female, who are distracted. If you're fixing your car and under the hood, or repairing a tire, or fumbling with your keys, or addressing a small child who may be with you while you're shopping, simply in our world makes you an easier target. It doesn't assume that you deserve being the victim of a crime. That wasn't in any way what I was attempting to convey. It was just basic safety. That was really then the shift that you mentioned was not specific to your story. It was a separate issue involving panhandling. And we hear from shoppers, we hear from the property owners, we hear from people who leave the Walmart and are approached, and how we deal with that. I can't imagine how many calls Director Kirsten has received from various entities saying, what can you do with these individuals who are panhandling? We heard from our attorney tonight that unless you're, well, even if you were willing to say to the Knights of Columbus, you can't do it either, it's unconstitutional. That in essence, unless there's an impeding of traffic, and it becomes more difficult when the person is not on private property. So if the individual is panhandling on private property, the property owner has a right to say, I don't want this individual here. But if they're entering the county easement, it becomes very difficult to enforce that. So certainly there was never an attempt to minimize the traumatic event that you experienced, and there was no attempt at victim shaming. I have daughters and a wife. I've lived here for almost 30 years, and safe shopping and safe navigating of this community is paramount to me as well. The idea of aggressively, was the word, aggressively confronting our retailers is just not a philosophy I subscribe to, especially when these retailers have been great community partners. They're concerned, if for nothing else, they're concerned about the safety of their shoppers and their clients. They are motivated partners, and I was slightly confused by the inference that it was hijacked. It was taken away from us and we weren't invited to the meeting. The board is here. They were elected by the people. We had an appointment by the supervisor for Trustee Anderson, who's a retired law enforcement officer, to sit as the representative of this board on the police, as our police liaison committee member. He has been working for months, as we talked about at the beginning of our meeting, and he referenced back to watching it on YouTube. He's been our liaison for several years. Trustee Domink has served in that capacity in the past. He's also a law enforcement officer, retired, and continues to work in the field. He knows these things very intimately as well, and he's been involved. This is a problem that, unfortunately, I think is amplified just before an election, and it's regrettable. Because when somebody comes to a board meeting for the first time, and really since I've been here for quite a while, you show up a few months before the board meeting, and then before the election, and you start talking about taking our vendors to task aggressively. I don't know that that's the right approach. I don't know that we want to do that. I realize that it positions you as a potential leader of some movement, but there's nobody on this board that isn't committed to the safety of our residents, male, female, young, old. The commitment is universal, and it's not party. It has nothing to do with party. It's been going on since I've been on the board, and I've worked cooperatively with members of both parties to see that happen. Mr. Fuller's comments were just brilliant. Just an incredible young man. Another fine product of Lance Cruz North, I assume. The itemization of all of the things that concern you were spot on. I would like you to get involved with some areas where your insight and brilliance can be most maximized. And the one that you mentioned first was the planning phase. And I would encourage you, and I'd like to introduce you to the fellow commissioners on our planning commission, and certainly I would ask you to consider being involved with our planning commission should we have an opening, or our ZBA, or any of our other advisory committees, or this board in particular, because you are clearly a talented individual with very nice insight. And the issues that you raised with regard to bike paths and non-motorized paths are things that the supervisor and I have talked about with many members of this board, and they are part of our master plan and are part of our master parks plan as well. The issues that you raised with regard to human trafficking and concerns about human trafficking, I sit on a commission with Director Kirsten, who was handpicked by the county executive and his team, who has put together a task force of churches, volunteers, and a number of people interested in making an impact on stopping this plague, this human trafficking plague that has kind of overcome our country. Really, it's a national interest in getting involved to eradicate that. I don't speak for the court, so I can't get into great detail, but Trustee Domink can vouch for me here. He knows the judge in particular. That's Judge Jokic. She's very, very concerned with human trafficking, and she actually put together what could be the first human trafficking court, really in our region, right here in Macomb County. She was asked by the governor to put together a team, and I'm very proud to serve on that team with her. One of the things that we do is we assess a human trafficking screening tool for any individual that comes in contact with the court. It's migrated over to Trustee Vosberg's committee. She serves on the county's Community Mental Health Board. And this screening instrument to try to identify young women who may be potential victims of human trafficking. So again, there's plenty of room to get involved, and I would encourage you, and I would be happy to reach out to you. The idea that it can only be done for the candidate that you're affiliated with is a misnomer. Your work is actually with the individual who has a hashtag that says "Together We Can," and I believe in that. I think that she's 100% right when she says "Together We Can." I'm not the enemy. Just because I sit in a seat that she would like to have doesn't make my concerns and commitment about your safety, Ms. Griggs' safety, and anybody else in this township's safety any less impacted. Very, very concerned about that, and I was thoroughly impressed with you. So thank you for coming to the board meeting tonight. The other two speakers were really, there was clearly a political slant presenters, and I respect the comments that were made. I'll start first to Ms. Elliott, who came to the podium and addressed some of the issues. She speaks the truth on a number of those things. I've known her and her family for many years. She has wonderful children, great kids. They really are. It's a great family. In particular, the photographs that she talked about, all legit. It's a very talented young lady that took those pictures, and I know their commitment to this community. What I didn't particularly like, and maybe there's some room down the road, was what happened to my friend Treasurer LaFata in the primary. It was a very ugly thing, and I don't know who was involved with who, but I like being out in the community when somebody asks me, hey, do you know the candidate Merriweather? Do you know Mr. Grievous? Do you know Treasurer Harkin? I'll stay quiet if I don't have anything good to say, but there's been some very positive things. Mr. Grievous left, but I got a call last week from a real hardcore Republican who wanted to know about this Grievous guy. And I was happy to tell him what I knew about Mr. Grievous and him being an honorable person. And despite the fact that I'm a Republican, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. I didn't like going behind some of my Republican friends and hear what was being said about me, Trustee Anderson, and Treasurer LaFata. The hardest thing for me to get over will be knowing his record and service to this country and having individuals come forward and call him a traitor. That hurt. And it hurt because he was talking about that issue came about because he was talking about an issue that Mr. Speaker raised having to do with, I think, what arguably could be considered common sense gun policy in the workplace and the position that it put our township in with relation to insurance. And so for him to be just raked over the coals and then see that individual be very involved with particular campaigns, it really hurt me quite deeply. It was really not good. I understand that's not my race, and I have really looked to just stay out of it at this point and focus on my race. We will talk about the positive things. Trustee Anderson and I have been working together to try to get our message out. But in terms of the back and forth in the other races, Mr. Speaker, I understand your position. I was actually grateful to see Ms. Elliott come in tonight and address some of those. Again, it's not my race. I really would like to see the trustee race continue as it has. I haven't seen nothing negative, and I won't contribute to anything negative about the people that are on this board serving with me in the trustee capacity. And I'm proud of the candidates that are running against us on the Democratic side. There's been no negative campaigning. Just talks about what they would like to do to better the township, and I think that's what, and I hope most residents can appreciate. I was privileged to be on a board with Ms. Hartman, and she's just a great human being. Ms. Jones, same thing. The difficulty is we're ramping up now. We're 3 weeks today until Election Day, and I know all of us will be grateful when it's over. More ugliness is unfortunately upon us. There were a number of issues raised about the clerk tonight. I'm going to elect not to say anything on that. She's not here to respond, and that wouldn't be fair. But I didn't like the piece that I understand is now out there, another real ugly, nasty, that attributes quotes to me and quotes to others. Unfortunately, I guess it just goes with the territory. I wish it were different, but unfortunately it's not. Again, thanks to those who came to the meeting and expressed themselves, and by far, Mr. Fuller, I was most thoroughly impressed with your comments tonight, so thank you.
Trustee Domingue.
It's going to be real short and sweet. Director Kirsten and the guys at the PD, men and women, you guys do a great job. I know you had a rough weekend. You had a couple bad accidents on Jefferson, so done a good job. And despite what's on social media, I think we all know just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. But I know our department does the best job. They put the people in the right places. And if there is a situation and a problem, they address it. That's the purpose of the Director of Public Safety and his two captains and the sergeants underneath him. We're up here as the board. We don't tell the police department what to do. That's that man's job, and he does a hell of a job doing it. So, and I've been in this business a long time. Mr. Anderson and Mr. Joseph has been his partner. But, you know, when it comes to running the police department or public safety, that's the director's job. He knows where to put his guys and how to adjust the problem. They've handled numerous felony cases, homicides, everything all through the years. And all the years I've known Director Kirsten, we go back 30 years. He's always done one hell of a job, and I'll back him and his men anytime. Thank you.
Trustee Busberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I was very pleased tonight with many of the public comments, because those are the kind of comments that, as a board, we need to hear. We need to know the issues that are important to our residents, so thank you very much. One other thing is, this past weekend I was over at the Historic Village for an event. Somebody found a car key, a Saturn car key, in grass over there. So if that belongs to anyone, we turned it into the treasurer's office. If you know of anyone that lost their key, they can claim it at the treasurer's desk. Thank you.
Treasurer LaFada.
I'm listening to two candidates campaign for my position. I am a lame duck. Problem is, and I mentioned it previously, it'd really be nice if candidates actually dealt with the issues. When I ran for office, you can go all the way back and look at The Voice, and they asked Mr. LaFada what he had in mind. And my comments were the police funding was primary, fair and equitable water rates was second, and the balanced budget. And that's been my goal, and that's been my duty to the township residents that voted me into the office. And now what we have is we have people that are upset because they're running for office and they put things out like lost checks, I have a plan, bureaucracy, low taxes, pro-business, technology of the 21st century, inefficiency. There's nothing in there really addressing issues. It's a bunch of buzzwords. And when you talk about, and I don't want to be critical, about airplanes flying in the sky, somebody really needs to do some research, because currently F-35As in Burlington, Vermont, somebody needs to do their own research. They're having major issues. They're closing schools and buying up homes because the noise decibels are over 82 decibels within a home and within a school. If you check Michigan MyOSHA, anything above 80 decibels in a manufacturing facility requires hearing protection, hearing muffs. So before somebody says something, they should really do some research into what they're really telling somebody that they stand for or what they're going to do, because it's everything that I'm looking at is really meaningless. When somebody tells me that the F-35As are going to bring economic boom to Chesterfield, I've been to 2 meetings and asked the question, what's the dollar amount? What is the dollar amount? What's the avenue for this expected revenue? And there's never been an answer. What I have been told is there's a possibility of losing commercial buildings in the south portion of the township where we already have infrastructure, because the impact zone, if there's F-35As, is going to be increased. Also, if you do some research, it's not all glory, because having Selfridge here, I know it's, it's great for defense, but it makes Michigan or Chesterfield Township #1 target for a nuclear attack. So somebody should really, before they talk, before you want to be a treasurer or be any type of elected official, should understand what the real issues are in the township. When I was a resident, I wound up donating many, many hours to try and figure out why the township wanted to raise the water rates anywhere from 27 to 48%. In the math, this didn't work. And guess what? The township residents never got that 27 to 48% increase. And we still have a viable water and sewer department. So if you're looking for something to do, when somebody says lost checks, I'll give you an example. Today, somebody from the clerk's department went over to grab ballots that just came in out of the new drop box before it had a chance to be sorted. And when that happens, there's checks in between those, and there's a possibility of the checks getting lost. And they were told when the mail is sorted, it would be brought over to them, so there wouldn't be another issue. But that issue was dropped on the lap of the Treasurer's Department because it was convenient for somebody to put it on their flyer. Didn't really address an issue. Didn't really address how we're going to maintain lower water rates, or how we're going to balance the budgets, or how we're going to move forward and make sure that the public safety department's funded. It's a bunch of buzzwords. Somebody talks about efficiency. Efficiency, you need to have data. And efficiency, to be a good number, a good calculation, is based on how much you utilize your current resources. And if you're not using your current resources to 100%, you'll never be efficient. You need to use your current resources before you even think about outsourcing your work to somebody else. That's what efficiency is all about. If you don't have the utilization, then that means that you either got too many employees or you're outsourcing work. But if you want to look at an efficiency calculation, I've got it. Look at overall efficiency ratings. It's a gold standard, and it'll give you everything in there to calculate efficiencies. The only data right now the township has to measure any kind of efficiency is you take the Plant Moran audit from last year and put it next to the Plant Moran audit this year and look at the budget amounts that were spent. That's the only data we have right now. So there's no benchmark data to improve efficiency. If you're looking for technology, I talk to our high-tech representative all the time. Technology is like you're foolish to go out and buy a new Apple phone every time a new Apple phone comes out because you invested in your technology. It's state-of-the-art today. You need to utilize that technology for a period of time until you get the payback for that. Then you can think about investing more. It's sufficient, it does the job, you utilize it until you get your values worth, until it's depreciated. It services you. You don't go out and buy new equipment every year because there's something new out there in the market. So somebody should think about looking at what issues the township has, like balancing the budgets, how we're going to control spending, like having statements of work for each project, so we know who's responsible, so we can control spending, so we can balance the budgets. Thank you.
Deputy Clerk Niza has a statement from Clerk Berry.
As a recording secretary for the township board meeting, Clerk Berry has requested the following comment be read into the record. As a parent, I'm deeply disturbed by an anonymous campaign piece that went out today that used my daughter as a weapon. You can lie about me as a coward. You can hide behind an unregistered, unknown political group. This disgusting attempt to use my daughter for your petty political gain is unacceptable by anyone's standard. You used her without her permission, and you better pray that she comes through unscathed. Clerk Berry.
A couple of quick comments from me. One is the Veterans Facility. I did have the honor of touring that facility last week with Executive Hackle and General Rogers from the state of Michigan. That project is on time and on budget for a substantial completion approximately January of 2021, with turning the keys over to the state of Michigan in March or April. The bike path along the front of Jefferson should be done by this winter, open next year. Another quick announcement, this is the second year in a row. I want to congratulate Vicki Bauer for receiving Distinguished Budget Award. She got one last year, and we just got word this year that our Chesterfield Township budget, 2 years in a row, has received that budget, or that award, which is fabulous. One comment specifically to Treasurer LaFada, Treasurer LaFada's comments, along with Mr. Kavich's comments, who have come to a lot of board meetings for almost a decade, along with Mr. Spica's comments, who I know is very new to the township and hasn't been to a lot of board meetings and maybe not is comfortable with the goings-on of township government. This board, the last 4 years, for that, I'm proud. I mean, I'm full of nothing but optimism and pride for what we've done. Mr. Kadich, Mr. Spica, Mr. LaFada, you're part of this. I'm proud of this work that we've done. The budget, we're strong financially. It was 4 years ago we were talking about layoffs in the police department and if it can exist. Our legacy costs, the turnaround on that from collapsing to not being able to provide the promises that government made for retirees, to being very strongly funded and sustainable. That turnaround, those turnarounds alone from a government structure standpoint, this board did that. And processes and procedures, APOs, we literally built this government over from the ground up. If you haven't been here watching the meetings and knowing where we were in 16 and prior to that, then you wouldn't realize the projects that are getting done. Mr. Kadich, what projects have got done? Number one, Memorial Wall out back. Sat there for a decade. This board got that done. What an amazing wall. It is. People come in from around the region to see that table and that wall and the character and the way it looks. Look out that back door right now, nothing but pride. The Weber Paddle Park, yes, it started in 2014. You know, we got it done, this board, with substantial grant and donations. Yes, and I drive by that park multiple times every single day. There are cars there constantly. There are people using that park, and it is a fantastic ad. Regardless how we got there, making the sausage with this board was very ugly and stressful for me. This board did that. Our finger is on that project. The bridge, with character, with lights, with the path, the extension of the path, done. This board did that. The path that you're speaking of, you should know this because you come to meetings. That project requires engineering, which is approved. Bids were open last week. It's happening lightning fast on a very large ditch enclosure and a very difficult chunk of concrete, or chunk of sidewalk, one of the most difficult stretches. So you'll see that connection done this winter, at the latest next spring, and that is only if the board approves the contract at the next board meeting, which is when it will be in front of us. The Nature Center, that is moving through the process. That 33-acre piece of property is a tremendous add, and again with partnerships that are not going to be very big lifts, but they're going to be unbelievable adds for us. Again, this board did that, even though very stressful for me. That's fingers that this board put on this community, and nobody can take that away. Regardless of, not to mention the road projects, the re-gravel projects, the sidewalks, Mr. Fuller, unbelievable how well spoken you are in your vision, and I was very, very, very impressed. We are woefully behind on pedestrian safety and sidewalks. We're making tremendous progress in the last 4 years, and there's a whole lot more progress coming. A non-motorized master plan for sidewalks, which will put us in a discussion for the grants we're going to need. Because we're not talking a couple $100,000 in sidewalks to catch up on the 20 years of mismanaging in not, I don't want to maybe necessarily say mismanaging, but not investing in those connections. Getting that Safeway across 94, that's all part of the vision. And I think you need to be a big chunk of that. Not to mention the new investments. The last 4 years we had a Cabela's get built and open, and BJ's, the interchange of 23 Mile and Gratiot changed forever. Some of that started under the prior board. So, and not to mention the investments that are coming now. Story Point, the new villages of East Harbor, too many to count. Olive Garden, which one of my family's favorites. This job is hard enough as it is, and important enough. But people just need to take a step back, understand the best you can the frame of reference the other individual is coming by. And I will bear my share of blame with the collapse of Treasurer Rafata's relationship that started very, very early. You saw a little bit of it tonight early in the meeting when we started talking about engineering. And that ultimately is where this all began. I'm passionate about that. He's passionate about that. And these 4 years, we haven't necessarily been able to communicate. But overall, the vision and the pride of what we got done is something no one will ever take away from this board. And it's something that I will be proud of well into the future. I would urge everyone just to be nice after these after we get through this next 3.5 weeks. The entire country, the entire community. At the end of the day, if we're compassionate and nicer to each other, we're going to do a lot better job for our community. Item 13 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by trustee Hemming, supported by trustee Vosberg. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned at 10:03 p.m.
How you doing?